This presentation is brought to you by Arizona State University's Julianne Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability and a generous investment by Julianne Wrigley.
And it was actually Heisenberg, I'm sure you all know this, but I'll reiterate it. So it was Heisenberg who came up with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. He wasn't going to call it Clyde's uncertainty principle. So he came up with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which says in quantum mechanics, in particle theory, you can either accurately measure a particle's location or you can accurately measure its momentum, but you can't simultaneously accurately measure both its location and its momentum. And it occurred to us, I mean, we really did have this discussion, I'm not making this up, and it occurred to us simultaneously that was exactly what was wrong with every strategy we had ever seen in the Pentagon. Now, I've been doing strategy for more than 6 years, and in the Pentagon we have about a gazillion strategies, and across the river they have about 2 gazillion more strategies, none of which, or very few of which, seem to be overly well aligned with each other, but all of them are focused on averting or overcoming a recognizable risk or threat. And so all of them. And it occurred to us that what we're doing is we are hyper-focusing on our location, and by the time you recognize your location and the recognizable risk and threat inherent in it, it's too late to change it. All you can do is respond to it. All you can do is react to it. While if our strategies maybe were focused on our momentum as a nation, the opportunities inherent in our trajectory forward as a nation, maybe we would have a better opportunity to influence the future environment to make it a more sustainable future. So we thought, well, that's kind of where we want to go. So then we had to come to grips with, okay, so what really is a strategy? Well, a strategy, we thought, has to have some kind of primary objectives. So we thought, well, what are the enduring national interests of the United States that form in a big flick that form the basis of our national strategy? Well, so I've said this repeatedly. I said it last night, but it's true. So I'm Catholic, and I wanted there to be 3 of them. So we argued around and around and around, and we could only, as hard as we tried, we could only come up with 2. We came up with 2 overriding national enduring interests, and those are prosperity and security. And we recognize that prosperity and security are wholly interdependent. You cannot have security in the absence of prosperity, and you can't have prosperity in the absence of security. Now, we'll get maybe to this a little later, but I'll tell you right off the bat, I define security and prosperity in a much different way than I bet you're thinking. I would define security as freedom from anxiety. And this covers a lot of things. This covers, not only freedom and security from attack from the outside, but it's freedom from economic collapse or economic depravity. It's freedom from hateful ideologies. It's freedom to express yourself freely. It's freedom from pandemic diseases. There's a lot of things wrapped up in anxiety and security and freedom, I think we recognize as Americans. And the other thing that I do is I define prosperity differently. I don't think prosperity is determined by GDP. I think GDP has to be a very poor metric of prosperity. I define prosperity as well-being. And interestingly, so does Gallup. The Gallup organization is doing a global poll of all nations eventually, that they've been running for a couple of years now, and it's called the Well-Being Index. And it's interesting because it judges how people in other countries feel about their well-being in the day that they're polled. So we had these 2 enduring national interests. Well, I got to tell you, and I said this to Dr. Vanderloo last night, I got to believe that probably many of the 200 plus nations in the world probably also have prosperity and security as primary objectives or enduring interests. So it was and this is really where it was a divine intervention, because we got the 3rd piece of this whole thing. It's the values that characterize us as Americans that constrain us in our pursuit of security and prosperity. We can't just go commit genocide because we're running low on rare earth elements in Africa. You know, there are constraints put upon us by the values that we respect that were laid out pretty clearly by our founding fathers and all of our foundational documents. Liberty is one, but I mean all the freedoms I talked about before, those are included as well. So okay, so we can't do that, but interestingly, we're not only constrained in our ability, in our pursuit of prosperity and security, we're empowered by those values. Those values are what provide us credibility to be a leader among nations, so that by remaining true to those values, we gain credibility in the eyes of the rest of the world as well as our own people. Now, the values that I'm talking about here, those values are also shared by, I would submit, by probably most people and most religions on earth today. We share a lot of common values. And I talked before about the fact that we recognize we're in a completely different strategic environment now, one that is completely interdependent. And it occurred to us that we as a nation need to stop seeing interdependence as a weakness and start recognizing it as a strength. If many of the people in the world share the same values, then we should be able to find converging interests in any given area in which we can offset the inimical bastards who will inevitably exist, who have divergent or conflicting interests. So it's not simply a matter of a national direction. It's really a matter of finding the converging interests among peoples and nations and cultures and ideologies to offset those who have clearly divergent or conflicting interests with us collectively. So basically, that was kind of the way we decided to frame this whole thing out. Now, when I told Admiral Mullen, let me interject something here really fast. It was at about this time that we both realized we're not smart enough to write a national strategy. So it actually came to us, you know, I'm the one who said it first. But I said, when I mentioned it, I said, but you know, actually, the more I think about this, now we wrote this was in August of 2009. So when I said it, I said, but you know what, I don't really think that's what's needed. I actually have thought about it, and I don't think what we need right now nationally is a new national strategy as much as we need a strategic narrative. A narrative to explain who we are as Americans in a new century and in a new strategic environment, a new civilizational epic, actually. So we decided that we would write a narrative that explains, a simple narrative. We said we wanted to limit it to 10 pages. I actually wrote the words, it wound up being 11, so I got gigged for that, but that was the length of it. We wanted to write something that people could easily read and find unity in. It's non-political, it's non-divisive, it's hopeful in nature. And in fact, the other thing that occurred to us when we were talking about Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and risk and threat is that there's every bit as much opportunity and hope in uncertainty as there is risk and threat. And we're a nation, or we used to be, a nation of opportunity and hope. That's what we represent in the world. It used to be in any case, and I think it still does. I think people are desperate for America to represent opportunity and hope again, and we're poised to do that.
This presentation is brought to you by Arizona State University's Julianne Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability for educational and non-commercial use only.